Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today, I am joined by Daniel Bobrow, CEO of AIM Dental Marketing. Danny has spent decades studying and teaching persuasive communication, helping healthcare professionals improve case acceptance, patient trust, and team confidence without feeling salesy or scripted. In this episode, we're unpacking why persuasive communication is often misunderstood in healthcare, why so many practices struggle to embrace it, and what it really takes for doctors and teams to master these skills in a way that feels natural and ethical. So let's get started. And now, a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Are you thinking about opening an orthodontic practice? I know, it's a big decision, but saving 25% on the ADEC equipment you need to get started, that's an easy one. Because ADEC has a special program called Smart Start, designed to help you launch your first practice. You get up to 25% off your ADEC orthodontic equipment and furniture. You also get complimentary services to help you run and grow your business. And my favorite part, access to the Smart Start pricing for 2 whole years after you open your doors. That gives you flexibility to add more chairs as your cash flow grows. It's pretty smart. As an orthodontist, you care about getting all the little details right, and ADEC really got it right with this program. So if starting off with a big savings on ADEC equipment sounds good to you, the ADEC Smart Start is definitely worth a closer look. Just follow the link in the show notes to learn more. Want a cleaner workflow for orthodontic cases? Meet Clarity Solutions from Solventum, formerly 3M Healthcare. The Clarity portal puts aligners, digital bonding, and retainers in a single streamlined platform. One workflow, fewer handoffs, and more control for planning through retention. Simplify your next case. Reach out to your local Solventum sales rep today or visit us at go.solventum.com/clarity. Again, that is go.solventum.com/clarity to learn more. Danny, I am so excited to have you on Hey Docs. Thanks for being here today.
It's my pleasure, Jill. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes. So the way I love to start off Hey Docs, anytime I've got a new guest on, is I love to have them share a little bit about themselves and their background. Especially for you, what led you into work with the healthcare profession and persuasive skills mastery?
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's sort of an accident of birth, you might say. I was born into a family of dentists. Were it not for my vision condition, which is not good, I might well have pursued a clinical career in dentistry. But instead, I wound up pursuing the practice management, specifically the marketing side of the profession. My brother was and continues to be a practicing dentist in Glencoe, which is a suburb just north of Chicago. In 1989, while I was sort of a generalist marketing consultant, I was still focusing in healthcare. I did have chiropractors, podiatrists, a lot of fitness centers as my clients. My brother said that there was a real opportunity in dentistry. He'd only been practicing 3 years at that time himself. And he said that docs were going to need help with marketing. And would I be interested in focusing on that vertical? And without a whole lot of resistance, I agreed, because I thought it made a lot of sense. And he could be my laboratory and my guinea pig at the same time. So we began in 1989. We went through a number of branding reincarnations. At that time, right now I position myself as the most experienced full-service dental marketing agency in the country. But we weren't doing digital marketing at that time. There was no commercially available internet in 1989.
Yep.
As 1999, 2000 rolled around, we did indeed jump in with both feet. So that's what we were basically charged with doing by our health partners, which is how we refer to our clients, getting their phone to ring. and then getting people to their website. In the process of generating those leads, we learned rather quickly that getting the phone to ring or getting someone to fill out a form on a website was necessary, but not sufficient to success. Prospective patients still needed to be communicated with in an effective manner to convert them into a solid and kept appointment. And from that sprang another dimension of our offering, which I called the art of first impressions. And that was concerned solely and exclusively with first-time telephone callers to a dental practice. Before long, we realized that the skills of connecting with people and recognizing the essential nature of connecting with somebody emotionally before getting into rational discussion transcended just a phone call from a first patient, first-time caller. The conversion was important, but so is case acceptance and treatment compliance. So that's what led to the development of the current program, which is called the Persuasion Blueprint.
I love that. And I'm so excited to kind of unpack all of this with you because you have worked with so many practices across the country, and not only on the dental side, but also in the orthodontic as well as other professions also. But I really want to dive into, why do you think so many doctors really struggle to embrace the concepts that you have been teaching about in your Persuasion Blueprint?
Well, that's a great question because first of all, it's a golden opportunity for me to practice what I preach, which is to persuade them that this is something they ought to embrace. And the reason that I think many of them don't is, first of all, no fault of their own. There's still to this day very little teaching of practice management or marketing in dental school. Last I checked, the board licensing exams don't have any practice management questions on them. So the dental schools are concerned with producing people who can pass the state board licensing exams. And doctors are really left on their own to acquire the skills. Now, there's no shortage of quality consulting firms, especially now, that can help dentists to acquire the full array of skills they need. But doctors, being doctors, tend to be rather clinical skills proficiency heavy. And I liken success in healthcare practice to a three-legged milk stool, with one of the legs, to be sure, being clinical proficiency, but another one being business acumen, and a third one being interpersonal communication skill. The unknown unknown, as Don Rumsfeld called it. People don't know what they don't know. But I also think that when they do realize that there's a lack of that ability in their wheelhouse, I think the reason that they embrace it less readily is they fail to view it as they view their clinical training and their protocols, which is a protocol. Yeah. And I think that when you view the acquisition of these so-called soft skills with just as much rigor and commitment as you do your protocols, your clinical protocols, that success ensues.
Yeah, for sure. In our profession, I think it's often a lot of resistance to anything that sounds like selling, because we're providing a service, we're not selling a service. But I think that we have to, and I want you to kind of unpack this for us, really help practices and doctors and team members reframe what it looks like to persuade somebody so it feels aligned with patient care, rather than feeling at odds with it. And we're this used car salesman that's trying to sell them into why they should move forward with some type of orthodontic treatment, or in the dental, move forward with a new crown or a new bridge or a new whatever it may be. So I'm wondering if you can talk us through that a little bit and unpack that for us.
Absolutely. Well, that's certainly the next essential layer to address and overcome, which is this perception of persuasion or sales as some form of coercion or manipulation. You're too young to remember the movie Shane, I'm sure. There's a notable line that Alan Ladd states in it, which is that a gun is like a hammer. It's a tool, and it's no more or less ethical than its user. And that's really the case. I do define persuasion as a set of skills and mindsets that are employed to influence someone towards a desirable course of action. It's pretty akin to sales too, which is empowering people to make a decision that's in their own best interest. Yeah. And so it's only manipulative if you're a manipulative person. And I like to believe the people with whom I work and this is table stakes for success with the Persuasion Blueprint anyway, is that you're a caring and a competent individual, that you have the goods and that you really want to deliver them to people for whom your offering represents a fit with their needs. Mm-hmm. That's table stakes. Now, where the value of the blueprint comes in is that being caring is necessary but not sufficient. Being competent is necessary but not sufficient. There exists in this world of communication what I call a care gap, which is the gulf between one's intentions and how they're being perceived by their counterpart. And this is in turn because of a phenomenon called the illusion of transparency. In other words, we believe often that our caring is self-evident and that all we need to do is be caring individuals or be competent individuals and people will flock to our door because it's self-evident. And that's not true. These are skills and protocols that need to be mastered and consistently applied in order to be successful. So we go through a number of different exercises with our coaching subjects to train them on signaling caring and to abide by what I call the 30-second caring rule, which is within the first 30 seconds of your communication with your counterpart, be they a prospective patient, a current patient, a non-compliant patient, that you first and foremost let them know that you remind them, and oftentimes, that you are a caring person. Mm-hmm. The sequence to persuasion is a threefold sequential process, which you go through caring, then you go to connection, and then follow and conclude with collaboration. And you can't achieve one until the preceding one has been accomplished. So we work with our students on transmitting caring. And that can be simply using and pronouncing your patient's, your counterpart's name correctly. It can be the tone of voice. It can be the choice of words that you use so that you avoid negatively charged words and embrace positively charged words like proud, concerned, and conservative. Not politically, but in terms of treatment. Yep. That you employ a conservative approach. This is what resonates with people, because what we really want to do is uncover the underlying emotion. People will say one thing and they're really looking for something else.
Yes.
When people are searching for a service that they're unfamiliar with, the most commonly asked question is, how much does it cost? And that often triggers us into thinking this person is looking for a bargain or they're not valuing treatment. In other words, our mind conjures all these different assumptions that are probably not correct. Mm-hmm. Or we take it personally. Yes, and I draw upon the work of Ruiz, who wrote the 4 Agreements, and a number of other authors who really drill down to what people say isn't what they mean. And what we really need to do is get at what the meaning is. What is the underlying emotion that's driving their desires and fears? Mm-hmm. And that's premised on the fact that we make our decisions emotionally and then we justify them logically, because we're not so much rational as we are rationalizing beings. So we really work a lot on helping people realize that, because we're sort of victims of our brain architecture and chemistry. Our brains have not evolved to keep up with civilization. Our default mode is to respond emotionally because our limbic system is geared to help us survive. And before there was civilization, the human being on the savannah who scrutinized the number of stripes on a tiger wasn't going to remain in the gene pool very long. So we were trained to view any change, anything, as a threat response. And that's carried over into modern civilization. So what we work on is to regulate our limbic system to, first of all, regulate ourselves so that we're not feeling emotionally threatened, so that we can then regulate the emotions of our counterpart, so that we can both move out of our limbic system into our prefrontal cortex, which is the center of cognitive and executive function. And that's where rational decisions are made.
Yeah, I love you really breaking that down. And I like what you said about how so many times we react or act from an emotional state and then move into that logical decision on this. And I think your point about cost. And I see this so much with my doctors where immediately a doctor takes that if a patient asks, how much does it cost, to being such a personal affront. It's almost like this whole guard goes up. And I love that you're really working with doctors to understand maybe there is something different behind, to your point, what that question, don't just take it for what it is right on the face there.
Right. And the key is that if you're going to persuade others, you need to persuade yourself.
Yeah.
And that means really taking a look at how you're processing information and responding emotionally. The 4 agreements, the book I mentioned earlier, it talks about 4 agreements that you make with yourself. And the premise is that we've all been sort of domesticated into being either a judge or a victim. And these are defense mechanisms which don't serve us well in civilization or in communication. And one of the agreements is to not make assumptions.
Yes.
And that's really a lot easier said than done. Another one is to not take anything personally, which is even more difficult.
For sure.
But when you look at taking things personally, it's almost a sort of an arrogance, because who are you to feel that you have control over what the other person is feeling or saying? That's their issue, not yours. And so when we can distance ourselves or detach ourselves from that dynamic, it really helps us stay in the game and be present in a positive as opposed to a negative and an emotional vortex that we meet resistance with resistance, and then that doesn't go where we want it to go. So basically, a lot of those skills pervade all 3 of the C's that I talked about, but we've really only largely talked about the caring component and the importance of signaling caring. It's essential. And then the next thing that we need to do is to connect with our counterpart, our patient.
Yep.
And a big mistake that a lot of doctors, especially professionals, make is that they assume that people are looking to hear about your expertise, that they're going to be more impressed and responsive to learning about how good you are at what you do. And again, your competence is not self-evident, and you do need to communicate it, but not yet. The important thing is to understand what's important, what's driving your counterpart, what your patient's needs and fears are. And when you can articulate that perhaps even better than they can themselves, that's when trust forms. That's when you close the trust gap. Because study after study has shown that people value far more highly your ability to clearly communicate your understanding of what drives them than they are impressed by your credentials and your expertise. Wise person once said, if we're going to do business together, the details can wait. If we're not going to do business together, the details don't matter. So good. And this is on telephone skills too. That's what we teach when receiving a call from a prospective patient. So many people are, I think, following the intake form in their practice management system. So somebody calls and says, hi, I'd like to know how much a crown costs. The first thing you'll hear is your name.
Yeah.
Insurance. And that is not exactly making a connection. That is a clearly transactional as opposed to relational exchange.
Yeah.
So the important thing is to say, I can help you with that. My name is Danny. May I ask who I'm speaking with? And then you get the caller's name, and you didn't say your name. You gave them your name. So it was a quid pro quo. I'm engaging in what Robert Cialdini refers to as one of the principles of influence called reciprocity. Yep. So before I ask you for anything, I give you something. And I also said, I can help you with that. So I'm sort of setting the tone for the relationship, which will, by the way, that'll help your treatment coordinator and the dentist to also communicate with the patient, because you're setting the tone for a relationship based on mutual trust and respect.
Yes.
And then the next thing I ask, and if it's an orthodontist, this may or may not be true, but you'll see in a minute why I ask it anyway. The next question I always ask is, are you in any discomfort presently, Jill? I use your name. And I ask people, why do you think I'm asking that question? And people say, well, you want to know if it's an emergency and you need to get them in right away. And I say, well, that might be the information that I'm going to receive. But what I'm actually doing is I'm imparting an emotional state. I'm imparting that I care about this person. And this is all in the first 30 seconds. So at the other end of the call, you may not realize it, but this person is being bowled over by the fact that they've never talked to a healthcare professional who has established caring within 30 seconds before.
Yes. Yes.
All right. And then I continue and we'll say, well, who may we thank for referring you to us today? And again, that's not to track how effective my marketing is. That's to exude confidence and pride and an assumption that you must have been referred by one of our happy patients or referring doctors, because everybody's happy with the work that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last question is, do you mind if I place you on hold for just a moment so that I can get to a quiet area and give you my undivided attention? Now, again, this is to help give you an opportunity to clear your mind and prioritize, because this caller should be the most important person in the world to you at this moment. But it also conveys caring to them. I don't say it's a madhouse here. Please hold.
Yeah.
Which you get a lot, sadly.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you say, Jill, do you mind if I place you on hold for just a moment so that I can get to a quiet area and give you my undivided attention? That shows real caring and professionalism. And again, you've just teed it up for the rest of the team to have a positive experience with this patient.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And now a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Hey docs, if your new patient follow-up depends on someone remembering, it's leaking revenue. Greyfinch automates new patient follow-up, texts and emails go out automatically, and your treatment coordinator just checks their tasks list to see what needs a quick call or a more personalized message. That is one of the many reasons I recommend everyone take a look at Greyfinch. It isn't just a follow-up tool, it's a complete practice management software built to help you grow and scale. Stop leaking revenue and get $500 off your startup fee with the Jill Allen special at greyfinch.com/Jill Allen. One question that comes to mind as I'm thinking through this, and I know that you're going to finish us up and not leave us hanging on collaboration because you've done so well at talking to us about caring and connection, but I'm just curious on your thoughts on how difficult I think this can be for orthodontists and dental professionals, and I think even their team members, to really master these skills. And what are you seeing that maybe helps them change the direction of this learning curve to make it easier, and or why sometimes it's harder for certain doctors or certain team members to really kind of get this?
That's a very important question, because we want to set our offices for success. And this isn't earth-shattering. You probably could guess what I'm going to say, but there has to be a commitment on the part of the doctor, because the team will respond to the cues they receive from the practice owner or the practice administrator if it's been delegated to him or her. But there's no substitute for that. And then there's no substitute for practice. We call it triad learning scenarios, otherwise known as role play, which people fear at first.
And hate, usually.
They do. I learned to sell in the fitness industry. I remember I was working at a health club that was the flagship of the chain. It was the country's largest chain, and it was being built. And we were basically in a drywalled room while they were constructing the facility. And my coach would use the drywall, which was going to be torn down anyway, as a chalkboard, as a whiteboard for us. And he would write finesse, and he would say, all right, Danny, I am just walked in and I would like a tour of the club. Go. And at first it's like, well, I would say, no, not what you would say. We're in roll. Let's do it. And it would be fun, actually, pretty quickly, because it's a form of performance. And then the structure is that you have an observer, a team member, and a prospective patient, for instance. And we give you a scenario. We say, go. And someone says, hi, thank you for calling Bobrow Family Dental, where we're creating a happy community, one smile at a time. This is Danny. How may I help you? And they go through it. And they say, I'd like to know how much a crown costs. And we give them the script, and they can read it at first if they want. So we want it to be simple and fun. They go through the scenario, and at the end, we say, all right, Danny, how do you think you did? We always have the subject, the team member, self-evaluate first. Mm-hmm. You know why we do that? Because the team member is always hardest on themselves.
Yep.
And they get it off their chest, and then the observer or the prospective patient get to say, well, actually, I liked when you did this and I liked when you did that. And then the big question I ask is not what did you like, but how did she make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel cared for? And then the person gets the feedback, which will be self-reinforcing over time. So to answer your question, success requires commitment on the part of the owner, requires commitment on the part of the team, and consistency.
Yeah.
You know, the treatment coordinator, front desk, and dentists should all be involved in the coaching because they all need it. These are essential skills that transcend any human interaction. I'll just elaborate a little further and warn you against what you may already know happens, but a lot of team members have been trained by their owner to just patiently ride out the latest wave of enthusiasm they get after being exposed to some new protocol or some new seminar that they just attended. Because again, the human mind, we like familiarity and pattern recognition. That's how our minds operate.
Yes.
We don't like change, even though it's been proven that our minds are capable of it through the study of neuroplasticity and that we can rewire our neurons. People resist it at first. Even a positive change can freak somebody out. You know, if you're a parent and there's a new school that just opened down the street that's got wonderful credentials and great, you could say, oh, that's wonderful. I can't wait to enroll my child. Or you'll think, well, I wonder how hard it is to get there. I wonder what security is like. I mean, this is the way our mind works. We think in terms of the negative because that served us in the jungle 40,000 years ago.
Yep.
But it doesn't anymore. So those are the things that are quite simply need to have happen. There's got to be commitment. There's got to be consistency and clarity from the team owner, from the practice owner.
You're so right on. And it's kind of that leading from the top down, whether it is the doctor or the office manager, they have to be on board with it. Team members have to be on board with it. And back to your point of it is role playing, at least on my side, when our teams work with teams in role playing, it is always met with such resistance. But to your point, I think once people understand it and get why we do it, it is so beneficial. I always take it back to that muscle memory. If we are going through the scenarios or thinking about what's the worst that can happen, or just getting all the wiggles out, getting all the anxiety out, and then get to the meat and potatoes of what you're really doing and why, understanding that why, gosh, it makes such a difference. I see on our side when we're able to work through those things.
But there is inertia and we recognize it and we take responsibility too. We recognize the reality and we don't blame the victim, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so what I start off is some really simple scenarios that people can practice and will demonstrate. So the first role play, I'm going to be the subject of this scenario. So I can demonstrate it. And then I can ask people for feedback and I show that I can take feedback too, because I'm not perfect either, by the way.
Yeah.
And I learn all the time. One really important skill that people definitely benefit from learning is the art of listening, because people mistake patiently being silent, waiting till your turn to talk is listening, and it's not. So we'll often start with a scenario like, "Okay, Mary, tell me about a recent trip that you went on," and she'll start and she'll say, well, we just got back from Hawaii. I was there with my husband. I said, oh, I was in Hawaii a few years ago. I love that state. It's the most beautiful thing. And then I say, all right, so how did you feel in that exchange, Mary? And she usually says, well, words like wasn't listened to or invalidated or demotivated. And why was that? Well, because you didn't even let me finish. And, people do this all the time. I call it comparative reality. A colleague of mine calls it pouncing. When we think that we're relating and we're supporting our counterpart because we're sharing a similar experience that we had. And what we're not doing is giving them a chance and we're making it about us. So we commit a number of cardinal sins. We interrupt, we one up, and we make it about us. We shine the spotlight on us. And then we do it again. And she says, we went to Hawaii and my husband and I were there for 10 days and we visited the Big Island and we hiked the volcano and we snorkeled and we had great seafood. And I go, well, that's fantastic. Tell me more.
Yes.
And it's a simple shift. where, yeah,
Yes.
I went to Hawaii too, and I may bring that up at some point, but not now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
Mm-hmm.
really simple primer to try to grease the skids a little bit so we can get into role play. And then I say, all right, now it's my turn. Now I'm going to talk to you. So we take it really slow, and I gauge the audience because, the key to persuasion is attuning to your audience. And that means attuning to them in terms of what Tova Hellestein calls the emotional ecosystem they inhabit. Somebody may be very emotionally charged about the subject matter. And in that case, we need to go very slowly. Or they may not process, they may be younger. And it's been demonstrated that the prefrontal cortex doesn't even fully develop in a typical human being until they're 24 years old. And so we have to recognize the limitations of our audience. And that's not to be condescending, it's to recognize the reality.
Sure.
So that we then can communicate with them in a way that resonates with them. We also want to look at their age in terms of their attention span or the types of the form of communication they're accustomed to. I mean, most people these days, I'm a boomer. And so I like when I talk to people to make eye contact and to pace me and to, basically support me. A lot of people these days, younger people their eyes are buried in their palm because they're looking at their phone all the time. And so when I say, hi, Billy, how are you doing? He says, good. And that used to put me off, but I realized that this is how they communicate. And so we need to attune to them. So that's what we go through in a lot of, it's not all role play by any means. I mean, we have and we can talk about it later, but I have a 7 roughly average length of 12-minute video modules that are the initial part of our coaching. And we ask people to view the modules, and then we have some exercises associated with them so that they can get comfortable with the 3 C's of persuasive communication: caring, connection, and collaboration, which we have yet to discuss in full. Yeah. But get them understanding sort of the technology. But then that's great. That's the skeleton. And now we have to put the meat on the bones. And that's where we get into the one-on-one coaching. And we make it real for them at that point.
Yeah. So what do you see as you start to see teams that you're working with really start to embrace this and commit to improving their persuasive communication? I just love the way that sounds, persuasive communication. What changes are you typically seeing in patient relationships, maybe team confidence, overall practice performance? What are you seeing there?
That's right. And I can quantify it for you, but the quality of the communication improves. People feel empowered. They went into this thinking this is another assignment. It's going to be more work. I'm going to have to learn to do stuff, or maybe it's going to embarrass me, or I'm going to, again, it depends on where they're at, because there's different kinds of resistance. And if some people exhibit identity resistance, which means that their identity is bound up with their behavior. And if you suggest that we're going to coach you on enhancing your communication skills, people are threatened by that. So we address that at the beginning, that this is not what that's about. This is about empowering you to make your job more enjoyable and to make you even more valuable to your employer. But the benefits are you increase your batting average, number one, when we're talking about prospective patient calls. The percentage of calls that you convert into solid and kept appointments will increase markedly and quickly. Because just that TAFI introduction I shared with you, TAFI is TAFI, it's a holdover from the art of first impressions. I'll use it interchangeably. I'll call it the TPB for the Persuasion Blueprint introduction now also. But just that 5-statement script that I share with people when they receive a call from a prospective patient, when they master that protocol, they can increase their appointment conversion rate by 25% in 1 or 2 months.
Wow.
It's remarkable. The value behind that, I didn't really explain it, is that while I'm doing the script, I'm establishing rapport, I'm conveying empathy, and I'm exuding enthusiasm. And at the same time, I am guiding the caller. I'm really controlling the call, but people sometimes view control as a form of manipulation. But in this sense, if somebody calls the office, they may not realize it, but they really want you to be in control of the call because you're the expert. And the reason that we're actually guiding the call is because we're asking the questions. So that's sort of the hidden don't want to flatter myself, but the hidden genius behind the TAFI introduction is that every one of those statements is a question.
Yes.
It's thank you for calling. How may I help you? They give you the name. They say, I can help you with that. My name is Danny. With whom am I speaking? And then they answer and I say, thank you for calling. Are you in any discomfort presently? So while I'm conveying empathy and showing caring, I'm also the one asking the questions.
Yep.
So many callers immediately lose control of the call because someone says, hi, I'd like to know how much Invisalign costs. Well, that depends. Well, what's it depend on? Well, it depends on the age and the time frame and the condition of the teeth. Well, my son is 14 years old. And so you can see I'm sort of on the ropes.
Yep. Reactive.
Responding. Yep. And when you're on the defense, you ultimately inevitably lose the battle.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do, is to, in a very professional and empathetic manner, gain and maintain control of the communication to the patient's benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. As we bring this full circle, I'd love for you to kind of, in turn, how this all works into that collaboration piece
Absolutely.
of it. So we went through caring and you've just laid this out so nicely into the connection piece of it. Let's talk about that final C.
Sure. Well, collaboration is all about partnership, and it empowers your counterpart, the patient, to feel that they are a part in the crafting of the plan. Because when they do that, they feel a sense of ownership. And people are less likely, when they feel a sense of ownership and partnership in the crafting of the plan going forward, they're less likely to bail. They're less likely to be non-compliant. But the important thing is that this is a sequential process. If you try to employ the skills that we teach in the collaboration component before you've effectively and successfully established caring, signaled caring, and made the connection, collaboration will not work. That's also not to say that you won't have to recalibrate from time to time, because people will need to be reminded of your caring or they'll need to reconnect. But collaboration is all about asking questions and revealing what is important to your counterpart. By avoiding jargon, not talking about occlusion and torque, biomechanics, and instead getting into confidence, fear, desire for success, to be ready for a specific event, be it a wedding or a graduation, or just being comfortable having their photograph taken. So, and you do this through a number of techniques. One I like to offer is called the emotion labeling ladder. We also like to show you how to convert attributes into benefits. But emotional labeling is about having a conversation where you start very neutral. You make a neutral statement, and then the person responds with an affirmative response. And then you offer a soft emotional label, which is just a surface acknowledgement of maybe what they're feeling. And then once they acknowledge that, you go a little deeper. And so maybe the 15-year-old you're talking to hasn't been using their retainer. So you say, I noticed a little shifting lately. And the person saying, yeah, it's just been a hassle for me. I understand. Is it because it's sort of annoying having to remember to use the retainer? Yeah, I just forget. Well, I understand. Sounds like that might be frustrating for you. And then your 15-year-old patient will say, yeah, I just don't get around to it as much as I should. So, well, that's fine. I understand. And then you want to get to the meaning label, which is translating the emotion into what their need is. And then you remind them that we did this and we've worked hard. You've worked hard to get your teeth to the position that you want them. And they say, yeah, I do want to be able to do that. And now you're in the collaboration phase where you translate that into the work together. Say, well, would it help if we work together to perhaps work the use of your retainer into your regular routine? Maybe put it next to your phone charger, which they have right next to the bed. Or your toothbrush. And so now you're collaborating. You say, yeah, that might work. Okay, great. Well, let's work on that. So now you've opened the door and you went from really just, you're not using the retainer, and you could say that, and you could say, well, I see some shifting. You're not using the retainer. Well, that's blaming. And that will raise resistance. By doing this ladder of sequential steps, getting deeper and deeper beneath the surface, the person willingly, of their own volition, opens up and chooses to be a partner in the solution that you're proposing. So that's what collaboration looks like.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a beautiful sequence in how that comes. And I can see exactly in an ortho practice and a dental practice, like if we can move our patients through these sequences, I'm thinking about it so much in the treatment coordinating room when we're past that new patient phone call, and in our industry where we are presenting the treatment and a doctor comes in. And I think so many times our doctors come in at, I'm the expert and here's what needs to happen. And here's, I see all these problems, and whether there's some blame involved or it's just the facts, ma'am, here's the facts. Now make a decision on the facts. And we really work on, and I think it's so important to your point, let's start a little bit with that emotional piece of, so many times a doctor will come in. I'm just going to use this as an example. Patient's got a big diastema, younger child between their front teeth, and the doctor just wants to fix the diastema. Or maybe the doctor says, hey, we don't need to fix that diastema right now because their teeth aren't in. But mom's emotional reason for being there is the fact that their child is being picked on. And they're here because they want somebody to validate and hear their concerns and give them a reason to say, it's okay, mom. That is as valid as a point as us waiting if you're standing in for your child or whatnot. Anyways, I think that,
no, it's a great point. Expert override, I call one of the big collaboration killers is what I call expert override. And that's when we've done it 1,000 times before. We know what the person's going to say before they say it, but you want to let them say it anyway. People need to feel that they're being heard and understood. Yes. And, you mentioned the parent, and I don't know how much this is done, but like that scenario I gave with the 15-year-old, that might be a conversation best had between the doctor and the patient without the parent.
Mm-hmm. There. Yes.
Because you don't know what the dynamic is, and that only complicates it. Or she might say, he really doesn't really listen to what I tell him, or, something. So that's another judgment call, but I think it makes sense sometimes to have those conversations one-on-one with your patient.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Well, Danny, this has been such a wonderful conversation, and I think your points are just so important to what is happening in our dental industry and our orthodontic industry, and just that really keying into the importance of communication. And I think sometimes we unfortunately make what we do so transactional. We want it to be personable, but it becomes so transactional because we got a job to do, and we got to get through the steps, and we got to, our job is to get the patient, to get him off the phone, to get him scheduled, to get him in, to get him to say yes. And we lose, I think, the importance of good communication will really make or break all of those steps coming to fruition.
I call it being minute wise and dollar foolish.
Yeah.
we all need to slow down, myself included. I'm getting involved in meditation. In fact, in a couple of months, I'm going to do a 10-day silent meditation retreat because I just think it's I've climbed mountains before, and I've been on multi-week expeditions. I think this is going to be as daunting a challenge for me as anything I've taken on. But I've learned that quieting the mind and being mindful is one of the best things we can do for ourselves. And it's gaining traction in the professional world. It used to be viewed as fringe cult kind of stuff. But through my work in yoga and the meditation that I've gotten involved with, I have a long way to go, has really helped me to realize that you just have to chill. We justify it because we say, well, we got another patient waiting. They don't want to be kept waiting, or we don't want to take up this patient's time. But trust me, everybody appreciates the time that you take. And if you spend a few extra minutes with this patient right now, if you remain present, that alone is going to pay big dividends in terms of success and results.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So if somebody wants to learn more about the work that you're doing or AIM Dental Marketing, what is going to be the best way that they can connect with you?
I appreciate the question. There's the two answers there. If you're looking for help growing your practice through generating leads, you want to go to aimdentalmarketing.com. That's the practice management, practice marketing side of the business. If you're interested in learning more about what we discussed today, and you're welcome to go to both places, of course. The website to go to is just my name, DannyBobrow.com. You'll have an opportunity to complete a persuasion scorecard for yourself that's complimentary. And what it will do is give you a baseline of how well you're scoring currently on the caring, connection, and collaboration scales. And then you can also book a strategy call with me, and I'll be happy to explain the different tracks that we offer in terms of coaching you or your team to become more persuasive communicators.
I love that. And now a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at getsmilesuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence. Well, the way I love to finish up Hey Docs, I know you know this, is I like to finish this up with a little speed round. So I'm going to glean a little bit more knowledge from you, and insight from you here. So are you ready for our speed round challenge?
I believe so. We'll find out.
Yeah, well, we will find out. All right. What is one daily habit or ritual that you feel like really helps you stay productive and balanced?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll be fast because I know we have to be fast, because there's two. One is I work out. I get up at 4:30 every morning and I work out for 1 to 2 hours.
Wow.
And then the other thing I do is usually around the afternoon, I will go to the bedroom and put on an eye shade, not necessarily sleep, not necessarily meditate, sometimes just cogitate on some project or challenge that I'm working on. Doing that pretty consistently. 20 minutes, strongly recommended. I get more work done sometimes in those 20 minutes or it's probably the culmination of prior work, but it's a great way to tie that bow together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's interesting how your brain can unlock sometimes when you give it time to unlock. So that's great. Love that. All right. If you could add one unconventional perk to a workplace, what would you add?
A quiet area like I just described, a meditation room or a contemplation room. But instead of expecting people to be awake and working hard all the time, recognize that downtime and giving them a chance to recharge their batteries and to synthesize what they've been working on in some quiet manner like that, I think is in your own best interest. I think it's a great thing to consider.
Oh, I love that. All right. And the final one, what is one piece of advice you wish you had followed earlier in your career?
Well, I didn't necessarily get I did get the advice because I was always been a voracious reader, but to practice the skills that I'm coaching right now, which is mindfulness, recognizing the emotional way in which we respond. I wish I had responded less emotionally and had gotten out of my lizard brain a lot quicker in interactions with people.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Danny, thank you so much for being a part of Hey Docs and for being here today with us. This was a really great episode. Thank you.
It was my pleasure, Jill. Thank you.
Mhm.